When Qianshou and Yuzhibo merge into one, they can achieve a vast array of possibilities. Yuzhibo Qingzhi. My ancestor, Yuzhibo Ban, you misunderstood me. Keywords of the novel. Hokage. Starting from Tsunade, no pop-ups, Hokage. Starting from Tsunade complete collection download, Hokage. Starting from Tsunade latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Classmates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Classmates. My 17 years old. Ninja School, 1. Your Class A. On the first day of school. At the age of only 5, the young Pheasant lay listlessly on the table, yawning and looking very sleepy, but his drooping eyelids kept staring at the girl closest to the podium in the classroom. I will marry this girl in the future. Rubbing his chin with his fingertips, he secretly made up his mind. Although the incident was sudden. But I think it's necessary to explain. This is not early love, this is lowly. For the sake of the family. I have already finished introducing myself just now, so it's your turn. Who will come first? A middle-aged teacher in his 30s finished speaking and looked around. The students looked at each other, unsure of what to do. However, there is nothing we can do about it. We are all strangers to each other, and of course, we are not very embarrassed to introduce ourselves and discuss our ideals in front of everyone. Perhaps it is precisely because of this understanding that the teacher who waited for no results no longer waited, and immediately called for a draw to break the deadlock. At this moment, a crisp voice sounded like a silver bell. Teacher, let me come first. Upon hearing this, everyone in the classroom focused their attention, and the voice was directed by a girl with brown pupils and blonde hair. Her face was like a full moon, and she was exquisitely carved with powder and jade. Her appearance was very charming. The teacher's face showed approval, thinking that she truly deserved to be the granddaughter of that adult. The girl slowly walked up to the podium under the gaze of everyone and introduced herself. My name is Gangshou, and my dream is to one day become a fiery figure like my grandfather, guarding the village. This sentence contains a lot of information, and some of the students present reacted and began whispering to each other. So that's to say, Lord Huiying belongs to you? A student couldn't help but ask. With a proud expression on his face, Gangshou said without hesitation, yes, the first Hokage was my grandfather. Upon hearing this sentence, the students instantly burst into a boiling pot. The first Hokage was the god of ninjas who pacified troubled times and held a crucial position in Konoha. After Gangshou returned to his seat, he was soon warmly welcomed like a princess. Gangshou's dream is great, everyone should learn from her in the future. The teacher raised the tone and suppressed the restless students below. With Gangshou leading the way, the students behind also became more active and unconstrained. The teacher started from Gangshou's seat and called on the students behind to introduce themselves on stage. After several rounds of shouting, I finally arrived at Qingzhi to introduce myself on stage. My name is Yuzhibo Qingzhi, and my dream is very simple. To live a life like a plant. The students below looked bewildered upon hearing this sentence. What does it mean to live like a plant? The teacher pondered for a moment and praised with a warm smile, a great dream. Just like plants, I work hard silently every day, and one day, I will grow into a big tree in the sky, providing shade on one side, which is similar to the will of fire. Oh, that's not true. The green pheasant waved his hand and said, what I mean is that plants don't have to do anything, they just bask in the sun all day, and they can live for hundreds of years. This simple life really makes me yearn for it. The slap on the face came too quickly, like a tornado, and the teacher was blown so hard that he couldn't find the north. The audience was even more silent, like death. Suddenly, the classroom burst into laughter. In summary, this is just lying flat. If everyone in the past recognized Gangshou's dreams so much, then they would scoff at Qingzhi's worn-out ideals. That Qingzhi classmate, this shouldn't be called a dream. At this moment, the teacher really suspects that the surname of Yuzhibo in front of Qingzhi is probably fake. In my impression, although Uchiha's children often have a difficult personality to socialize with, they are very ambitious. How could such a strange thing happen? They just put it on display right away. The green pheasant looked at the other person with round and rolling eyes and asked in reverse, "Don't you have to work, isn't it a great dream?" That could be amazing. This kind of complacent ideal, idle all day, except for eating and sleeping, looks like quite satisfying no matter what. The teacher was just about to refute it, but upon closer examination, it was truly remarkable. You should know that some people even have a big problem living. Compared to others, Qingzhi's ideals are also quite satisfying. After all, the prerequisite for achieving all of this is that you first have to be very wealthy to support your mediocre life. Qingzhi, you can go back now. The green pheasant silently returned to its seat. He didn't just write that paragraph haphazardly, but rather laid the groundwork for his future shortcomings. Don't be fooled by his carefree life at school now. In fact, he is currently at war outside. He doesn't want to be pulled to war just because he's too excellent, and become a nutrient for the big tree of the leaves. In addition, the Uchiha clan gives the impression that they are full of aggression. They choose to put it on display in order to create an impression that it is harmless to humans and animals, lower the defense of others, and seize the position of Hokage in the future. Qingzhi, a child, naturally cannot have such a deep mind, but because he is an orphan traveler. If he wants to become Huiying, it's not that he has any lofty ambition, it's simply that he has no choice. After the war is over, the high-level officials of Muyi will be killed and the green pheasant born in Yuzhibo will definitely be affected by the pond fish. The best way to avoid this situation is for Uchiha to release a Hokage. The other members of the family, the green pheasant, are out of hope. Everyone is extremely straightforward. In the original work, it was clear that there was a rebellion, but when there was nothing wrong, they would shout at the Nanha shrine, fearing that others might not know. So, he can only go on it himself. According to convention, the travelers should have a unique golden finger of their own. For example, if their name sounds intimidating, they may bring a template or something, but unfortunately, apart from having the same name as that one, they have nothing to do with anything else. But it doesn't seem to be entirely okay. His deceased mother has the blood inheritance limit of ice escape. In other words, green pheasant is a potential stock that possesses both types of bloodline inheritance limits. Awakening to the bloodline, the ninja's chakra will experience a rapid growth. If subjected to strong emotional stimulation, the chakra may even skyrocket or even go berserk on the spot. A typical case, the young Bai in the original work is like this. After seeing his mother being killed by his father, his power loses control. When he reacts, the entire house is pierced by a huge ice cone, and everyone dies on the spot. In addition, he is still a member of the Uchiha clan, and chakra is naturally much larger than ordinary people. In the original work, Kakashi was surprised to see Sasuke for the first time when he was 12 years old and had a chakra that could use the Hogwarts technique. In fact, he could use it at the age of 6, and the green pheasant has these two potentials. In the future, without awakening the kaleidoscope writing will I, it is conservatively estimated that his chakra level will reach a fine level of 8 without any problem. Don't underestimate the level of Jing 8. Looking at the whole world, this chakra level is definitely an outstanding presence. Kakashijing 6 is often ridiculed as a unit of measurement, even though chakra is so small that he has to carve dog heads on earthen walls, and the carvings are lifelike, but there are actually quite a few chakras in the actual 6, it's just that the people around them or the opponents are too abnormal, which makes it appear that Kakashi chakras are not many. Having two types of blood inheritance limits, why break the golden finger? I am nothing but a golden finger. But we cannot say anything too absolutely, so as not to make a fool of ourselves. There is a probability difference in the inheritance of different bloodline boundaries, and having two bloodline boundaries at the same time is difficult to add. In my impression, besides technology and ruthlessness, it seems like the woman who likes to wear fishing net socks is also the same. It is estimated that the probability of artificially giving birth to a double-blooded inheritance limit is extremely low, otherwise the double-blooded inheritance limit would not have been so small. Shortly after Qingzhi's introduction, another student quickly approached to introduce themselves. Qingzhi held his cheek with one hand and looked at the boy wearing a kimono with a delicate face. His name is Orochimaru, and if you're not mistaken, he should be the scientist from the original work. Perhaps it's because handsome guys always attract each other, and after the introduction, the other person intentionally or unintentionally glanced at themselves. The green pheasants looked at each other and smiled. Confirmed eye contact. In the future, it is important to have more in-depth communication and cultivate emotions. Of course, priorities cannot be chaotic. Looking sideways at a blonde little loli. The Yuzhibo clan has really been unlucky for 8 lifetimes. As the 2 major entrepreneurial shareholders of they fought a great war in the ninja realm. The Yuzhibo clan was not the first to lead the way, shedding blood and tears. With the help of their clan, it's not an exaggeration to be a spokesperson in the world. When running for the 4th generation Hokage, not to mention being elected, it was a blatant insult to not even receive a nomination. Not to mention that after the death of the 4th generation, the elderly and immortal 3rd generation still held the position of Hokage with great righteousness, firmly holding on to their power and refusing to let go. They even used the Nine Tails Rebellion to cause the Uchiha clan to relocate the power center of the village, which was equivalent to a change of direction and suppression. Don't say these are all pots hidden by the group, who knows if these 2 people are singing together. What the leader cannot say, only Yuzhibo Itachi, this young man, was fooled and crippled. The high-ranking officials in Kiba are no longer treating Uchiha as a human. I, Yuzhibo, want to rebel and seek fair treatment, which is also a normal reaction. From here, Qingzhi has already realized that in order for Yuzhibo to be elected as Hokage, what is important is not strength or reputation, but political identity. Do you think in reality, the other side of a certain ocean also needs to first stack buffs? This is also why Qingzhi has ideas about Gangshou. When Qianshou and Yuzhibo combine the 2 powers into one, they can achieve a vast array of possibilities. The stone tablet passed down from generation to generation by Yuzhibo is the correct understanding of posture. My ancestral motor, you misunderstood, sir. P.S. I originally wanted to call it Dongshalang or Rifangu, but because the name is not easy to pronounce with 3 characters, I switched to Qingzhi, which sounds more convenient. The protagonist's appearance is probably the black-haired winter lion Lang. End of this chapter. 2. Chapter 2 Double Blood Succession Limit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Double Blood Inheritance Limit. For this reason, he gave up the entire forest and sacrificed too much. After all, if there were a day, with the character of Gangshou, if he found something, he wouldn't have been beaten to death, but if he were beaten to first-level waste and lay in a hospital bed for a lifetime, it would be possible. At the thought of this, Qingzhi's face showed a sad expression. But there's nothing I can do about it. I'm doing it all for the sake of my family. To understand this point, all you need to do next is prescribe the right medicine. But the question is, how can he get close to Gangshou? Don't be fooled by the fact that the 2 are classmates now. It's easy to get close to Gangshou. Who knows if there are those ninjas who secretly protect Tsunade? If you see that he is too close to Tsunade, it's possible that he might play a book and say that he was sent by Uchiha to use the Mainan scheme. The senior management learned that it is possible to find an opportunity to secretly kill themselves someday. This is not that the green pheasant is alarmist and overly nervous. Just think about the outcome of Gangshou's younger brother and boyfriend. It's a coincidence that both of them have been braiding their hair for a short period of time. Both of these people have the idea of becoming Hokage and changing the village. With the influence of Tsunade, they have a high chance of becoming Hokage. According to the direction of human nature, who has the greatest benefit from doing so? Answer. 3 generations of Hokage and his family. Let's not talk about the character of the third generation, but it is impossible to guarantee the family members behind the profits gained through the reputation of the third generation Hokage. The meme of Yuan Fei 3000 is quite impressive to Qingzhi. Parentheses, the marriage alliance between Qianshou and Yuzhibo is the least desirable among the interest groups behind the top management. Qianshou and Yuzhibo are so strong that they can easily pick one out. If the two families combine, no one knows what kind of monster will be born, and it will be impossible for other families to survive. There was only a corridor between Qingzhi and Gangshou, which was why Qingzhi was keenly noticed by her as she gazed at Gangshou. Seeing Qingzhi staring at him with a sad expression, Gangshou was very puzzled and said, "Is there anything on my face?" "It's nothing, Gangshou is really great." The green pheasant touched its big conscience. "I have decided not to pursue Tsunade too actively until I have no shadow level strength. Just maintain a normal relationship between friends. Also, limited by the thoughts of previous lives, I dare not refine this copper." "You're right or wrong. I just feel that people like Gangshou who have lofty aspirations are truly admirable." After thinking for a moment, Tsunade said, "I remember you were Uchiha." The green pheasant responded, "Green pheasant. You look very different from the average Uchiha. Qianshou and Uchiha have a deep connection, deeply influenced by their ears and eyes. Gangshou has a good understanding of Uchiha. Lonely and unsociable are the impressions of most people. But the attitude towards life like Qingzhi, who is not ambitious and puts on a bad show, goes far beyond their inherent understanding. Isn't he handsome enough to stand out from the crowd?" The green pheasant showed a big white tooth. "In terms of stinky fart, you are truly unique. I am a pacifist, and the thing I hate the most is fighting. Living a peaceful life like a plant is my way of life. Trees are beautiful in the forest, and the wind will surely destroy them." The green pheasant still understands this truth. Once a person is too excellent, they will appear out of place with the people around them. Even if they are humble and low-key, they will be perceived as having ulterior motives. In addition, his political identity, which naturally harbors hatred, makes it difficult for him not to be targeted. Before he grows up, Qingzhi needs to be steady. In terms of first impression, Gangshou couldn't say he had a good impression of Qingzhi. He murmured and said, "I think you're just lazy." "Ha! I didn't expect you to find me hiding so deep." The green pheasant and dead pig are not afraid of boiling water. They put on an attitude that as long as I am lazy enough, you cannot blame yourself with lazy reasons. The first impression of Gu Ran is very important, and Qingzhi understands this principle. However, due to the political identity of Uchiha, Qingzhi cannot approach Gungate in this way and can only choose another way to approach. As the saying goes, "To argue is to argue, not to argue is also to argue." Similarly, chasing is chasing, not chasing is also chasing. Afterwards, the two of them didn't talk much. Qingzhi was busy with important matters and had to sleep, but for no other reason, he was too tired. Happy times are always fleeting, and soon it's time to finish school. With the sound of "class is over," students who have long been eager to return rush out the door. The classroom, which was just filled with high school friends, instantly becomes empty. The teacher in class glanced at someone who was sleeping soundly and shook his head. The young man didn't work hard, while the old man was sad. He has no good impression of the Uchiha clan. As long as Qingzhi doesn't disturb others during class, he will just turn a blind eye. If he doesn't listen well in class, he will waste his time and lose himself. Not long after the students left, Qingzhi woke up and found herself alone in the classroom. She immediately realized that she had overslept and wiped the saliva left by wiping the corners of her mouth before leaving the classroom. When leaving school, the sky was dyed crimson, and the green pheasant walked alone on the road, alone. Two men passed by him, and one of them stopped for a moment. He turned around and looked at the back of the green pheasant as it left, pondering, "Isn't this your family's green pheasant?" It's been a long time since I saw it. How's it going? Have you been okay lately? The other man shook his head. The Yuji wave green pheasant has the potential for both ice escape and riding will eyes to inherit the limits of blood. It was highly anticipated by the family since childhood, but an accident caused all of this to dissipate. Qingzhi was born without parents and was raised by her grandmother since childhood. Due to a shortage of manpower on the front line, the retired Qingzhi grandmother took the mission to the battlefield and unfortunately died in an accident. Upon learning the news, Qingzhi collapsed on the spot and fell seriously ill. After waking up, he stayed indoors and became self-destructive. He used his laziness to numb himself all day long. In order to prevent such a good seedling from continuing to willingly fall, the Uchiha family has decided to send him to a ninja school, hoping to resolve his frustration and regain his composure through friendship among peers. Returning home, Qingzhi silently closed the door, bent down, and gently opened the blanket, which was covered with a thin layer of white powder. As long as someone stepped on the blanket, a footprint would be printed underneath. After careful inspection, Qingzhi breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that no one had come to his room. He carefully covered the blanket back in place and walked to the window to carefully examine the thick dust on the window for any signs of being stepped on. Ninjas don't like to walk through the main entrance, so the window is also a key observation area. In order to check more carefully and not miss any clues, Qingzhi closed his left eye and pressed down on the right half of his face with one hand. His eyes began to converge on chakra, and a faint crimson color appeared in the gaps between his fingertips. The blood inheritance limit of the Uchiha clan. Sharingan. After learning of his grandmother's death, the green pheasant's eyes were awakened by stimulation. This power was not reported to the family, but deliberately hidden. He started writing will eyes at the age of 5, so he should be considered a little genius. It seems that the senior management of Kiba has a fear of Sharingan, and exposing this ability can cause unnecessary trouble for themselves. After confirming that no one had sneaked into the house, Qingzhi began rolling up his sleeves to practice. He was so tired this morning, not only to create a persona, but also because he was really tired. His daily routine is different from that of ordinary people, sleeping during the day and practicing at night. What can be learned in ninja school is very limited, and green pheasants can sleep in school during the day. When I get tired from training, I stop to rest and look for the cultivation notes left by my deceased grandmother to watch. Then, I wait for my energy to replenish before continuing my cultivation, repeating the cycle. The next day, it was dawn. The green pheasant exploded with liver all night long, panting and sweating profusely. He muttered to himself, "I'm really tired. Finally, let's train for a while, then take a shower and go to school." Thumbs extend upwards and overlap, with the left thumb pointing upwards. The gesture is unprinted, and with eyes closed and focused, a faint chakra overflows from the indication. Suddenly, the green pheasant felt a strange sensation lingering around his chest, icy and cool, very comfortable. Following this feeling, he slowly opened his eyes and looked at the ice cube spread out in his palm, an uncontrollable excitement overflowing in his eyes. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Future Development Direction of Bingdun. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Future Development Direction of Bingdun. Awakening from the icy retreat, the green pheasant is like a precious treasure. In this way, he now possesses both bloodline and limit abilities at the same time, and his future cannot be said to be bright, it is simply dazzling. Although the performance of the original work Ice Done may seem ordinary, Qingzhi knows that the power of ninjutsu depends on the practitioner. The small stones in the hands of experts can defeat the swords in the hands of ordinary people. For example, can the first generation of Mudun be the same as Yamato's Mudun? The former can create a forest out of thin air in a desert, while the latter can only build houses at best. Taking the example of abnormal behavior like Zhujian may not be of reference value. For example, can the water escape of ghost sharks be the same as that of ordinary people? That's clearly high done. The determination of the power of ninjutsu mainly depends on how much chakra is invested, and the green pheasant, who has a dual health inheritance limit, chakra is far more powerful than ordinary people and can fly with great strength. It is believed that if developed properly, Ice Dun's performance in his hands will not be inferior. As for whether it can achieve the exaggerated expressiveness of the One Piece King and the green pheasant, it is estimated to be a billion-bit difficult. Don't even think about it without the level of the tailed beast chakra. Qingzhi still has some self-awareness about himself. His potential in chakra should be quite good, but his future growth to the level of a tailed beast is probably a bit uncertain, and there is probably no hope in the normal path. He wants to become stronger in two ways, ruthlessness and technology. The first one, it's very simple. The green pheasant goes directly to cut off the person he treasures, kills his wife and testifies, and opens the kaleidoscope to write the wheel eye. Pupil force itself belongs to a type of chakra. Chakra is composed of yin and yang, and the pupil power belongs to yin, which is spiritual power. If you open the kaleidoscope, theoretically your chakra has a chance of skyrocketing to the level of a tail beast. But the question is, isn't this a mental illness? A normal person would definitely cut off their own wife. You also need a knife, brother Dao. If it's a brother, come and chop me. The above is a joke. Parentheses, in summary, the green pheasant would not choose the first path, so currently there is only one path left to choose from. Engage in technology. Technology is the primary productive force. In the case of multiple dogs in the later stage, if Qingzhi practices honestly, it is really not worth looking at. Only technology can keep up with the footsteps of those who are hanging on the wall. However, currently he still needs to work hard and hone his foundation. Let's put aside the practice of writing will eyes for now and focus on getting Ice done up. I miss it so much, and Qingzhi starts to tinker with his abilities. Although no one teaches him, it's strange that some parts seem to be engraved in his genes, and he knows everything on his own. This is a bit abstract, similar to the feeling that mature boys have of being self-taught. Qingzhi walked to the kitchen, turned on the faucet, picked up a bucket of water with both hands, and poured chakra into the water. After a few minutes, the temperature of the water began to gradually decrease and float in mid-air. In addition, he can also use his mind to slightly change the rough shape of the water, such as changing from a spherical shape to an elliptical shape or a conical shape. If it is too delicate, there is no way, and the difficulty increases sharply. P.S. The original work, by Gang, seems to have awakened like the ice shield. The green pheasant maintained this condition for about a few minutes. No matter how difficult it was to maintain, a drop of water in mid-air fell to the ground with a splash, scattering a puddle of water. Upon closer inspection, there were still some fine particles inside, which were the ice residue that had solidified when the temperature of the water dropped to a certain level. Qingzhi wiped the sweat off his forehead and didn't expect the seemingly simple task to cost chakra so much. After breakfast and a brief rest, the green pheasant continued to work hard. This time, not only did it make progress in controlling the floating time of the water, but it also lowered the temperature of the water. Tasting the sweetness, the green pheasant was immersed in training like chicken blood, and time flew by unintentionally. After regaining consciousness, I glanced at the alarm clock and realized that it was already 10 o'clock. Being late is bound to be late. Qingzhi has made up his mind to create a bad image in the school and didn't even care about being late. However, he still chose to go to school for no other reason. He was overworked and too tired, so he had to go to school to catch up. Qingzhi washed his face and was about to leave when he glanced at the pillow at the head of the bed. After a moment of silence, he put it in his backpack and pushed the door open before walking out to the ninja school in a familiar car. As expected, as soon as they arrived at the classroom, the students in class looked at them with strange eyes. Qingzhi scratched his hair and said awkwardly, "So what? Am I late?" The teacher said with a stern face, "Qingzhi, do you know what time it is now?" Qingzhi's attitude was correct. Explaining is concealing, concealing is the fact. I'll go out and punish you. Ah. The teacher was overwhelmed by Qingzhi's upright attitude and thought he would defend himself. He coughed twice and said, "Forget it, it's your first offense. You can go back to your seat. I don't need to say much, teacher. Don't do it with small evil, don't do it with small good. Teacher, your kindness and forgiveness towards me are actually indulging my evil." The words were spoken with great enthusiasm, combined with the gesture of a big hand waving, with a sense of righteousness, causing the teacher to be momentarily stunned. "Is it wrong for me to forgive you? Well, since that's the case, let's go out and get punished." "Okay, thank you, teacher." The green pheasant bowed deeply and, when leaving, kindly closed the door. After this operation, the whole class couldn't understand. Continue with class. The teacher clapped his hands, indicating that the students should pay attention and not be affected by the green pheasant. It's important to attend class. The green pheasant, who was punished to stand outside the hallway, let out a sound of sexual pleasure upon hearing the routine inside. Using his elbow as a fulcrum, he clenched his fist and dragged his cheeks, lying on his side. Sleeping on the stomach during class is not as comfortable as lying down. The green pheasant, who had intended to squint a few times, suddenly thought of something very troublesome. Awakened ice done, that's great. Blood inheritance limits are quite rare things in this world. But precisely because it is rare, his study of Ice Dungeon is not like studying the 5 great dungeons, which have many cases for reference. The only place where we can trace the origin is still on the side of the Snow Clan in the Land of Water. Don't think about it on the other side of the Water Kingdom. He passed by with a wooden leaf like Uchiha, and I don't know how to die. Let's find another way out. His mother died early, and there was no inheritance left. What the green pheasant could do was to explore by himself and build cars behind closed doors. No doubt the progress of cultivating ice escapes was very slow. We need to find the right path to develop Bingdun. He can actually use the Sharingan method to copy the skills of these ice dunk ninjas. Developing ninjutsu can be time-consuming, and there's no faster way to copy homework. You said you were copying the ninja Kakashi. However, this will expose my writing wheel and feel quite troublesome. We need to change our mindset. He remembers that in the original work, there seemed to be an ice escape created by the natural environment in the snow country. Although it was not authentic, he could refer to it. Although there was no other way of saying it, Qingzhi felt that he was convincing others with virtue, and believed that the ninjas there would understand him. After opening his mind, Qingzhi actually came up with a method. Can I also refer to the sand of my beloved Luo during sandstorms? The structure of ice blocks is destined not to be able to split and combine freely like the sand of my beloved, but he can use snow in a different way. The principle of my love for ninjutsu is to inject chakra into sand and operate it, and changing it to injecting chakra into snow should also have the same effect. He can emulate my beloved Luo by putting snow into the ninja gourd beforehand and using it during battles, playing a role similar to my beloved Luo's absolute defense. Of course, in practical operation, it is definitely not as simple as simply injecting chakra. He has only provided a way of thinking now, and the road ahead is still long, and we need to slowly explore it ourselves. At the thought of these, Qingzhi couldn't help but feel uneasy and wanted to go back to practice. He was full of energy and didn't even feel like sleeping. Wow! The sound of a paper sliding door came from behind. The green pheasant, who had a premonition that something was going wrong, turned its head like a mechanical gear, and a middle-aged man was looking at him with a cannibalistic gaze due to being deceived. Hello teacher, said Qingzhi with ease. The teacher roared, "Green pheasant." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. I really didn't read a certain book. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. I really didn't read a certain book. After being scolded by the teacher's spittle, Qingzhi returned to his seat and was greeted by criticism and mockery from the people around him. You're too brave, aren't you? You're actually sleeping in the hallway. Qingzhi yawned and took out a pillow from his backpack, ignoring it. He looked at the classmate sitting next to him dumbfounded. What the hell are you doing at school? The green pheasant bluntly said, sleep. Hey, Lu Xiong, could you also say one or two words? The child, who was called a deer male, pressed his finger against his chin, pondered for a moment, lifted his eyelids, and spoke at a moderate pace. When you go to sleep later, lend me your pillow to sleep. Get lost. On the side of the bed, there is no room for others to snore. This child named Lu Xiong, whose full name is Nara Lu Xiong, is relatively young and has the same hobby as the green pheasant. He likes to sleep in class during free time. It's really troublesome. It seems like I'll have to bring my own pillow in the future. Lu Xiong scratched his pineapple-shaped hairstyle. Well, forget it. If my mom finds out, I'll sneak a pillow to school and probably get scolded so badly. Qingzhi fell on the pillow and said, remember to wake me up when class starts later. Lu Xiong looked at the green pheasant that quickly entered a sleeping state and exclaimed in admiration, there is no one I know who can sleep better than you. I, Lu Xiong, would like to call you the strongest. Well, I really appreciate you looking up to me. The green pheasant responded in a daze. Their conversation was all in the ears of the white-haired boy beside them. He looked at the sleeping green pheasant, squinting slightly, as if he was having some ideas. Not long after, the bell for class rang. Qingzhi was awakened and silently stuffed his pillow back into his backpack. He had the courage to sleep in class, but as for the pillow sleeping, it was too reckless. I had a class in a daze, and during lunch break, the students took out the bento boxes carefully prepared by their elders, paired with vegetarian food and balanced nutrition. Qingzhi is just an orphan and a lazy person. Don't think about luxury items like bento. Just go to the small shop and buy some bread to eat. Stepping into the snack bar, there was a long queue in front. It was really lively. The convenience store will launch different products every once in a while. Today, we are launching a product called red bean bread, which is selling very well. I have tried it once and it feels very average. The green pheasant, who lived in a foodie empire in his previous life, had a very cunning mouth. If it weren't for his family forcing him to go to school, Qingzhi would have wanted to drop out and open a restaurant. The prerequisite for pursuing high technology is to have money, and Qingzhi thinks that doing business seems to be a good choice. Using some delicious food from previous lives to reduce dimensionality can definitely earn a lot of money, and then hiring a few trusted people, while being a hands-off shopkeeper and practicing in leisure time, is it not as fragrant as being constantly scolded and licked by high-ranking officials like Mu Yi all day long, and licking blood from the blade all day long? Then use the money earned from opening a shop to become a wealthy father, hire ninjas like Kiba, and work for oneself. The picture won't be too good then. At the thought of this, the green pheasant couldn't help but tremble in its shoulders and burst out laughing, attracting strange gazes from those around it. Cough. The green pheasant pretended to cough twice, low-key and low-key. He bought 2 rice and vegetable roll casually, ate and walked on the road. When he returned to his seat, he had almost finished eating. Without saying a word, he took out his pillow and lay down there to sleep. At this time, he directly refused any student who wanted to play ninja games with him. Hey, who are you pulling? You're pulling this dozing bug who sleeps all day except for sleeping. Under the warning of his companions, the student glanced at the green pheasant and felt that it made sense, so he turned around and left. Qingzhi sleeps all day at school and doesn't communicate much with people. Everyone thinks he's a weirdo. Qingzhi doesn't like to communicate with people, firstly because he doesn't have the time, and secondly because he doesn't want to have too much emotional connection with these people. Unless unexpected, all the students in this class should become ninjas after graduation. Except for a few who are lucky enough to live to the end, the vast majority are likely to die during a mission. People are animals that seek benefits and avoid harm. Since they know in advance that they will die in the mission, the green pheasant naturally does not socialize with them, and it is not expected that it will be very sad at that time. Even if this could be an opportunity to unlock the kaleidoscope Sharingan, the green pheasant with his eyes closed suddenly felt someone standing in front of him. When he opened his eyes, he saw a hedgehog head and a white-haired boy. Although he has white hair, it's a pity that he looks plain and unremarkable. He's really blind to this bunch of white hair. My name is Saleya. The boy is very familiar with Saleya. Your name is Qingzhi, right? Is there anything I need to do? Qingzhi couldn't understand how well Zilai had approached him. As the three ninjas of the original work, Zilai is also the object he wants to win over in the future. He was still thinking about how to get to know them, but he didn't expect to bring them to his door. Zilai also looked around and confirmed that there was no one around. Then he quietly leaned over and said in a mysterious tone, "Let me borrow one to talk to." Excuse me for a speech. The other party was mysterious, and Qingzhi didn't understand. I don't know what you mean. Zilai also firmly said, I know everything you did at night. Qingzhi widened his eyes, wondering if Zilai also knew about his secret training at night. How could this be possible? Who is particularly busy monitoring themselves in the middle of the night? Are you crazy? The plan of Qingzhi is to create a useless image by flaunting it in front of everyone. Then wait for an opportunity to awaken one's own ice escape, repel enemies, realize the importance of companions, work hard, inherit the will of fire, and ultimately become a generation of Hokage. The prodigal son turns around, but gold remains unchanged. How suitable it is to fabricate textbooks for promotion. By that time, even if one exposes their ability to write will eyes, it will be a thing of the past and they will hold great power. But once you find out that you are secretly training at night, then your plan will definitely fall through, especially for someone like Zilai who has a big mouth. The green pheasant felt guilty as a thief and said weakly, What do you know? Zilai also sneered, Have you been secretly reading Little Yellow Book lately? Ha! Qingzhi was confused. What was he talking about and how could he possibly be such a person? Zilai also looked at Qingzhi's refusal to admit it and said with a wicked smile, You're just pretending, how could you have been so dazed all day without waking up? Qingzhi covered his face with one hand, and he was afraid of revealing information for this fool. Zilaya, this product is judging people by themselves. It seems that this product has always been a color swatch since childhood, just like crayon Shin-chan. What is the serial number of the movie you're watching? Zilai's mouth is just a professional term. The so-called serial number will not be mentioned here for the time being. In summary, without a certain degree of cultural relevance, it is impossible to say such words. Qingzhi said speechlessly, I'm really not reading Zio Wangshu. Don't worry, I won't take you for free. We can exchange and share resources, Zilai also said hee. I like a beautiful big sister with a broad mind, wearing leopard print personality underwear. The scene is really tempting. You know what? The truly seductive one should be the maid plus white silk. As a scholar, Qingzhi feels the need to express some academic opinions at this moment. Oh, Zilai also dragged out his voice with a wicked smile. Cough cough. Just now, Qingzhi was too straightforward. She wanted to find a reason to defend herself, but unfortunately, someone with blonde hair, lowly, who had returned to her seat, hurt her. Her face showed a maggot-like gaze and she uttered two words. A pervert. Qingzhi was busy and explained solemnly, I, Yuzhibo Qingzhi, didn't read Zio Wangshu. Gangshou picked up a book without any explanation. The green pheasant has already planted the impression of reading yellow books in his mind, and no matter how he explains it, it will not be effective. The green pheasant wants to cry without tears. Oh no, it seems like I was misunderstood. Zilai also scratched his cheek. Misunderstanding your sister. Qingzhi was so angry that he grabbed Zilaya's collar with both hands, shook it fiercely, and burst into a rude expression. Beep. Give me my innocence. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Gangshou's Childhood Dreams. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Gangshou's childhood dreams. The news about Qingzhi staying up and reading yellow books in the middle of the night was accidentally leaked, sweeping the entire class. When it was time to train his sword in the afternoon, Qingzhi always felt that people around him were looking at him with strange eyes. He wanted to explain that those female classmates saw Qingzhi walking towards him and immediately hid far away, afraid of getting dirty. Please listen to my explanation. The hands suspended in the air were nowhere to be placed, and the green pheasant was so depressed that it wanted to pinch some guy and make a colorful scene. Qingzhi, it's not a big deal. Zilai also comfortingly patted his shoulder. The green pheasant's face was as black as potsticker, and when he was seriously considering whether to kill him, there was a scream from each other not far away. "Yah, how handsome Mr. Orochimaru is." In the center, surrounded by a group of girls, there was a boy wearing a kimono, with a delicate face only a billion points behind that of a green pheasant. The target in front of him was filled with swords in his hand, and the sight looked quite good. Orochimaru ignored the cheers of the girls and threw his sword at himself. This handsome, aloof, and powerful character was very popular in front of the little girl, causing her to scream incessantly. She looked like a fan seeing her own Gij. On the contrary, it is the collective displeasure of the boys. What's so remarkable about that guy, Orochimaru? It's just a matter of his level, his aura. I can do it any time if I want. Zilai also envies Orochimaru for being so popular among girls. He became a ninja largely because his profession as a ninja is easier to please girls. Zilai couldn't wait to throw the sword in his hand, hoping to emulate Orochimaru and win the cheers of the girls. However, he tried to imitate Orochimaru and failed to hit any sword in his hand. He could only stomp his foot in anger, powerless and furious. The girls watching couldn't help but make fun of themselves. "Huh, since you're such a fool, if you still want to surpass our Snake Maru Lord, you can't measure your own strength. Let's live in the next life. Damn it, look at the move." Zilai was also eager to prove himself, throwing things around aimlessly. He didn't have much hope at first, but this time the target was filled with swords in his hand. He couldn't help but be taken aback. His index finger wiped his nose and crossed his waist, but it drove me crazy. "Wow, that's amazing." Finally arrived Zilai also enjoyed the girls' compliments and chuckled, "Well, it's okay, isn't it?" Opening my eyes, my face was empty, different from what I had imagined. What about strange people? In a daze, I suddenly noticed several girls gathered around another boy with a look of admiration. It was a lazy guy with a lazy face. What is the situation? Zilai also looked bewildered. Why did everyone run to Qingzhi's side? "Fool, the target you hit is another one." Lu Xiong pointed to the empty target next to it that was filled with targets. "What?" Zilai also emoted, "Why is Qingzhi so powerful?" In his impression, the green pheasant was either sleeping or on the way to sleep, similar to him. Why is it so powerful? The difference between people is so big, it's so frustrating. Lu Xiong sighed and said, "Of course, even if he gives up on himself now, his foundation is still there." Zilai also looked puzzled and said, "Give up on yourself." Lu Xiong didn't respond and looked at the worried expression in Qingzhi's eyes. If this momentum continued to decline, he probably would soon disappear from the crowd. "So impressive, how did you do it?" A girl with a ponytail looked admiring. Qin Jifeng had a bad review, but he couldn't resist showing off his skills well with a sword in his hand. The saying goes that flaws do not hide the beauty, and coupled with his relatively good appearance, the scandal of sneaking a little yellow book at night and causing him to sleep in class was selectively ignored. Qingzhi said lightly, "Isn't it okay to have hands?" The teacher who recorded the grades was so shocked that his chin collapsed upon seeing this scene. This is the power of Uchiha. Even if he sleeps all day, his actual combat performance is so outstanding. Orochimaru looked quietly at the green pheasant, revealing a hint of interest in the ordinary person's erect pupils. Gangshou glanced at his mouth and refused, saying, "You're quite capable." Originally, her sword performance was only ranked behind that of Orochimaru, but with the appearance of Qingzhi, she could only devote herself to moving the position of the second son. It's not that Qingzhi wants to pretend to be coerced here, but that his previous level is just like this. If his strength suddenly drops, it will definitely arouse suspicion, and his strength will gradually decline. First create the impression that you are a genius, and then explain it when you suddenly explode later. After all, geniuses are unreasonable. Even if he falls halfway, he will quickly recover. It's more logical than starting with nothing but suddenly exploding later. In the impression of the animation, when Gangshou and his team studied under the third-generation Hokage, they appeared to be around 11 or 12 years old. In other words, now that they are 5 years old, there should be 5 or 6 years left for their grades to slowly decline in the eyes of the public. There is currently a war outside, and he is not the protagonist in the novel. He graduated so early and is in a hurry to be reincarnated. But there's one thing he doesn't understand: isn't Zilai the same classmate as Gangshou? When I was apprenticed to Hokage for 3 generations, Zilai also said it was my first time meeting the green pheasant, was puzzled and could only attribute the timeline to the chaos of the Fire's Shadow timeline. Weekend. Ninja school is on vacation, and children don't have to go to school. In a secluded house far from the center of a bustling street, Gangshou stood outside the door and shouted, "Is Grandma Mito there? I'm coming to see you." Suddenly, a kind voice came from the door. "Come, come." The person who pushed open the door was a woman with eye-catching red hair, with a pretty face and a bun-like bun head. There is a diamond-shaped mark on her forehead. Although she is already in her grandmother's grade, she looks very young, and time seems to have left no traces on her face. "Really, why do you run towards me every day or two?" Mito fondly rubbed Tsunade's head. Gangshou threw himself into her arms and chuckled, "Because I love Grandma Mito the most." A few years ago, after the death of Grandpa Zhujian, Gungate felt sad for a while. It was Mito who constantly comforted her that brought her out of her sadness. As she grew older, she knew that the saddest person at that time was actually Mito's grandmother. Her parents often had a lot of things to do and didn't have time, so Gungate came to Mito to accompany her every day. "Alright, don't just sit outside. Come and sit inside." Mito smiled and led Tsunade into the room, pointing to some snacks. "If you're hungry, take whatever you want." She naturally wouldn't eat any snacks herself, all of which were prepared for her frequent granddaughter. "Mito grandma, tell me more about Grandpa Zhujian's situation." "You're not tired of listening yet?" "Well, even after listening 100 times, I won't get tired of it. I really can't do anything about you." Hee hee. Gangshou picked up snacks while listening to Mito tell the story of the pillars, and unknowingly ate almost all the snacks. Mito chuckled and joked, "Our little stick is really edible. You've eaten so much in one go, and it makes me worried if your future husband can afford to support you." Gangshou licked the oil stain on his mouth and said, "I don't need anyone else to support me. If it were me, I would also support others." "Gangshou, girls cannot say such things." "Why?" Xiao Gang blinked his eyes. "You will naturally understand in the future." Mito smiled and hugged Tsunade in his arms. Mito's arms were very comfortable and warm, and Tsunade couldn't help but move back and said, "Grandma, will that part of the girl develop when she grows up?" Mito was taken aback for a moment, and this time he realized that Tsunade had also reached his age and began to pay attention to his appearance. He wore a kind smile on his face and said, "Yes, you have such a good appetite. You will definitely develop well in the future and win over many men." Upon hearing this, Gangshou said, "Is the development of that part related to eating?" "Yeah, what's wrong? It seems like I need to control my diet in the future, said Gangshou with a sad expression. Mito's expression puzzled. Why? If that part is too big, it will look heavy in effect combat. My dream is to become a great ninja like my grandfather. Don't let anything so big affect my performance. Mito. I didn't know my chest was a treasure when I was young, so I mistook battles for treasures. Mito didn't know what to say. That part is not only related to diet, but also closely related to genetics. Really? Gangshou asked, wanting to confirm further. Mito comforted, yes, diet only accounts for a small part, what's important is genetic factors. After thinking for a moment, Gangshou realized that it was indeed the case. Those tall-looking parents often had very tall children, and he immediately showed his face and dispelled his worries. Thank you, Grandma Mito. I can rest assured of what you said. You and your mother are both very young, so I must also be very young in the future. Upon hearing this, Mito's face turned black on the spot. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Misunderstanding. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Misunderstanding. Gangshou jumped off Mito with a concerned expression and said, What's wrong, Mito grandma? Your face looks ugly. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Mito glanced meaningfully at Tsunade and said, I hope you don't regret it in the future. Gangshou tilted his small head and showed a puzzled expression. Mito didn't want to continue wandering around on this heart-wrenching topic and changed the subject. You've been going to school lately, tell me about the situation. Is it a ninja school? I feel like there's not much to talk about. Gangshou crossed his hands and placed them behind his head, showing a lost interest. Grandma Mito, can I apply for graduation directly? The assessment for graduating from ninja school is nothing more than 3 body skills, which she has already mastered. As the granddaughter of the first Hokage, she was born with outstanding physical talent and received instructions from the second Hokage Kazuma from a young age, personally guiding her. The things that ninja school can give her are really limited. Mito shook his head and said, Don't say that. There are children in the same age group as you in school, right? You should have many common topics. Maybe there will be your friends among these people in the future. The descendants of the great clan are not pursuing the goal of learning ninjutsu in themselves. The main task is to make political statements and build connections. Partner. Gangshou put down his hands and began to seriously consider this issue. The ninjas will form a team of 3 after graduating from school, and then 1 ninja will lead the team. This kind of thing is already known to this grade's Gangshou. Are there any expected objects in school? There is a guy named Orochimaru who looks very good, fair and pure, with a calm personality and good talent. He looks like a very reliable partner. Grandma Mito, tell Grandpa too that when I graduate from school, let him team up with me. This is not feasible. As village cadres, we need to play a leading role as models. How can we abuse our power? There will be specialized personnel considering the graduation distribution of ninjas from various perspectives. Gangshou took Mito's hand and shook it, leaning on Jaya coquettishly, saying, What's the matter? Just once. Mito dressed up and said, Not even once. How about you talk to your second grandfather and see if he agrees or not? Well, let's just forget it, I won't bother him anymore. Second grandpa looked stern and fierce all day, completely different from the kind and amiable grandfather. To be honest, Gangshou was a bit afraid of him. Mito smiled and continued, I heard that you have children from Uchiha this year, right? Mito, as the wife of the first Hokage, is still quite interested in Uchiha, who has a deep connection with Chisho. Especially this year's Uchiha is very different from previous generations. Both of his parents have different bloodline boundaries. If this child inherits both bloodline boundaries at the same time, then their future is limitless. Mito has lived from the Warring States period to the present day, and even ninjas with dual-blooded boundaries can count with one hand, but without exception, they are all powerful ninjas in all directions. Countries once wanted to artificially mass-produce double-blooded limited-range ninjas, but later found it simply unrealistic. Although single bloodline limited ninjas are rare, mass production is not impossible. By planting extensively, cultivating more land, and adopting a strategy of quantity-based victory, as long as one has the intention, one can quickly transform from one person to a large ethnic group. But the dual-blooded inheritance cannot achieve the limit, and the root cause is that there is simply not so much high quality land for people to cultivate and sow. People with blood stains and boundaries are not arrogant masters. How can they accept their significant other to label themselves indiscriminately? And I don't know if it's because the dual bloodline inheritance limit conflicts with each other when passed on to the next generation, which often leads to various problems. Being able to continue healthy growth and inherit the bloodline limit of one parent is already considered a thing of the past. The double bloodstain limit belongs to the kind of existence that can be encountered but not sought. Mito's expectation for the green pheasant is not the double bloodline limit, but to see if he can inherit his mother's ice-dun bloodline limit. Then, after several generations of development, Kiba may have his own family that can inherit the ice-dun bloodline limit. Yes, that's a guy named Yuzhibo Qingzhi. Gangshou's fierce and itchy attitude made Mito feel that his precious granddaughter disliked Qingzhi very much. It seems like I hate him from your tone. Gangshou shook his head and said, I can't say I hate it. I just can't stand it. Despite having such a great talent, I just don't think about making progress and sleep all day. Maybe they have some ulterior motives. Mito is aware of the matter of the green pheasant. It is widely believed that Chihiro regards love rather than ninjutsu as power, while Uchiha regards ninjutsu as power. However, this statement is actually incorrect. No one loves more deeply than Uchiha. They usually seal this kind of love, and once they understand what love is, the emotions they have been bound by will be released, and even gain the power of love beyond 1,000 hands. But this kind of love also comes with some kind of risk. Because of knowing love, when love is lost, a stronger hatred replaces it, and a special chakra surges out of the brain, acting on the visual nerve, causing changes in the eyes, resulting in the Sharingan. So when his grandmother, who had relied on each other since childhood, passed away, the young pheasant's temperament changed greatly, and it was understandable for him to use sleeping all day to numb himself. Upon hearing this, what's the point? Almost laughed to death. The green pheasant has a fart's dilemma. She tugged and said, I don't know if the pheasant has any worries, but I know this guy only sleeps in class all day and secretly watches some strange things at night, okay? Mito was taken aback and said, strange things. Gangshou was a bit hesitant to say, just that. Which one is that? Gangshou gritted his teeth and blushed, saying, it's just little yellow book. Mito. Gangshou clenched his little milk fist and swore, last time in the sword assessment, I would have lost to someone like this. It's a shame for a 1,000-handed family. I must win against him next time. Now Mito's mind is completely confused. What is the situation? She can still understand using sleep to numb herself. But is it really good for you, a 5-year-old child, to watch this thing? This is no longer numbing herself, it's simply depravity. Her grandmother's spirit in heaven didn't know how to feel when she saw her grandson fall so badly. After visiting his grandmother at the Martyrs' Memorial, Qingzhi kept thinking about something on his way back. Did his grandmother really die in battle? Can't it be that one's own person gave it a negative impression? The false will of fire. Bonds of friendship, unity of friendship, where leaves dance, fire also grows endlessly, for the sake of peace. The true will of fire. Killing companions, killing tradition, brainwashing pyramid schemes, and self-destruction. A big boss who creates peace and keeps his mouth shut. Although the original work is a youth manga, if Qingzhi really treats him like a youth manga and deals with it, he probably won't even know if he will be sold in the future. The heart of harming others must be present, and the heart of preventing others must be present. Before growing up, the pheasant should use its laziness to disguise itself. As he was walking, a familiar voice came from ahead. "You're so slow." Qingzhi lifted his eyelids and looked at the white-haired boy in front of him. "What's up with you scheduling me here?" "It's nothing, I'll just apologize to you." Zilai also had a smile on his face. He handed over a black plastic bag and said, "Didn't that incident last time cause you to be misunderstood? So, I came specifically to apologize this time." "What is it?" The green pheasant received the package and found it quite heavy. "Good thing." Zilai also rubbed his hands. Qingzhi specifically glanced at him, then took out the contents inside and glanced at it. His face immediately turned black, almost bursting out. "Hee, isn't it good?" Qingzhi didn't say a word and directly returned the yam to Zilai. "Sai, what are you doing?" "What, why? Do you still think I'm not miserable enough with this thing?" "Don't, if you don't accept it, I feel guilty." "Get lost, you." So, one desperately refused, the other desperately stuffed, and in the dispute, the contents of the bag scattered all over the ground. The green pheasant was shocked and turned pale. He quickly crouched down to pick up the scattered books. If anyone saw him, he would have jumped into the yellow river and couldn't wash it clean. He was picking it up when he suddenly saw a pair of tender white legs. He couldn't help but be taken aback, and his gaze slowly shifted upwards, striking the eyes of a delicate and pearl-like girl. "It's just Gangshou." She slowly bent down and then picked up a book with a picture of a sexy girl wearing revealing clothes. She briefly flipped through it and blushed in her ears. Qingzhi hurriedly explained, "This thing is not mine." Gangshou said that although you explain, it doesn't prevent me from giving you a punch and a pair of perverts. The green pheasant held a panda's eye and looked at a mischievous creature with crossed hands, lying behind its head, whistling. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Green Pheasant vs. Gang Hand. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Green Pheasant vs. Gang Hand. So, after taking such a big detour, you just want me to teach you how to wield swords. Qingzhi let out a sigh and looked at Zilai in front of him with a speechless expression. Zilai also clasped his hands together, with a very sincere attitude. "Please, I really want to be welcomed by the girls too." Qingzhi hesitated for a moment and said, "If you're talking about the sword in your hand, that big snake Maru guy is also very good." Zilai also pouted, "Compared to that stinky guy, I still prefer to find like-minded people." Qingzhi explained, "I've told you all, I didn't read Zio Wangshu." Zilai also hunched over and said with a wicked smile, "Made, by C." The green pheasant was momentarily speechless. "I really don't know how to explain it now." Considering Zilai's possible behavior of being persistent in the future, coupled with his intention to meet this potential stock, he finally compromised and said, "Okay, I promise you." Seeing him agree, I have been dancing with high heart since then. Qingzhi thought to himself that even if you play with the sword in your hand and run away, it may not reach the level of popularity of Orochimaru. After all, the decisive difference between you two lies in your appearance. After agreeing to Zilai, Qingzhi and Zilai also found an open space for guidance, and also used this reason to train themselves. It's not good to train at home all day. Training time flies by, and without realizing it, the sky has already turned fishy white, and the sky is getting late. Qingzhi brushed away the sweat from his forehead and looked at Zilai, who was still training, secretly surprised. You should know that he awakened both Bingdun and Shu Lunyan at the same time, and their physical fitness exploded. It was impossible for his peers to keep up with his footsteps, and even this Zilai could keep up. Chakra is composed of Yang and Yin, where Yang represents physical energy and Yin represents spiritual ability. Is it because Zilai is very lascivious, so he secretes more androgens, so his Yang energy is relatively high, and his chakra is huge, even reaching a rare sperm count of 10. To become an excellent ninja, one needs to consider multiple aspects, such as a flexible mind, excellent judgment, and the ability to wield swords with one hand. But if there is one ability that stands out, you can ignore all of this. As long as you have a huge chakra, you can ignore all of this. If you have enough chakras, you can freely squander ninjutsu. If you need any more tactics, just push horizontally. It is precisely because of this that Zilai, who performed poorly in school, is also qualified to apprentice to the third-generation Hokage of Orochimaru and Tsunade. When ninjas graduate and assign teams, they will make an average adjustment based on the strength of each team, which means they will deceive those who are not deeply involved in the world. In the original work, the son and daughter law of the 3 generations of Hokage, along with the 6 students they led, were said to be cooperating, but in fact, at a deeper level, they were all the family forces behind these 6 people. Hinata, Inzuka, Yoshinori, Aikido, Nara, Yamanaka, the legitimate lineage of the 6 major families of Tokugawa. Genius and genius. Nobility and nobility. Civilians and civilians. You see, Ning Xiai, Tian, and Shao Li are standard commoners. Although Ning Xiai was born into a wealthy family, the bird in the cage on his head is not as good as a commoner. This is the main indicator that the upper level considers when allocating. In order to thank myself for teaching the sword skills, I also specially invited him to eat ramen noodles. When he returned home, due to being a bit tired, he did not directly engage in the practice of ice escape. Instead, he lay in bed for a while, closed his eyes to rest, and coincidentally saw the study materials that Zilai had also forcefully given him. Qingzhi shook his head with a bitter smile. Zelaya was afraid that he wasn't miserable enough and even bribed him with a small yellow book. Really, are you this kind of person? Perhaps due to some convenience, he flipped through it casually. Ha! Made, by C. TSK, this guy from Zilai also quite likes her. After flipping through a few pages, the green pheasant suddenly woke up. Confused. Although strongly condemning, the body did not stop. In a few more minutes, I'll go practice. Watch for another 10 minutes. Watch for another hour. I practice all night every night. It's so hard. What's wrong with balancing work and rest? The next day, looking at his haggard self in the mirror, Qingzhi felt heartbroken. Yesterday, I was hurt by my beauty and became so haggard. It's all my fault. You don't have anything to do with giving me this kind of thing. Damn it, from today on, I will quit lust. The green pheasant angrily threw its tooth cup. The next day, on his way to school, Qingzhi happened to meet Zelaya. After spending time with him yesterday and sharing some common hobbies, the two of them officially established their friendship. Zilai also saw the green pheasant and said, "It seems you had a wonderful evening yesterday. Go." The green pheasant took away the pig trotters from Zilai, looking disgusted. "Hey, you're too far-fetched. I've already given you all my treasures. When will you lend me yours?" Qingzhi Yizheng sternly said, "It was said that I didn't look at Shao. Talking about these things early in the morning, you guys are really disgusting." The voice of the third party echoed from behind, mixed with a hint of disdain. Qingzhi and Zilai also turned their heads and saw a girl of the same age standing behind them. Zilai also lowered his eyelids and looked up and down at Gangshou. Gangshou frowned and said, "What are you doing?" "The washboard." Although Gangshou couldn't understand what he was saying, he felt offended and came up with a single blow to Hoyujin. I never expected Gangshou to be so irritable. He would come up and beat him down. Green pheasant. What are you looking at? If you look again, I'll beat you up. Gangshou gave a fierce glare, and in her mind, Qingzhi and Zilai were also of the same kind. Well done, I've been displeased with this guy for a long time. To show that he had nothing to do with people like Zilai, Qingzhi also added, I'm not compatible with this lascivious guy. Gangshou. I will defeat you in practical classes. After finishing speaking, Gangshou let out a snort and left without waiting for Qingzhi to ask. What is that in practical classes? The green pheasant is like a two-zhang diamond, unable to touch its head. Zilai also got up from the ground and angrily rebuked his despicable behavior. Damn it, you dare to fall into a well and throw stones. Qingzhi hung up high and said, it's okay, it's just a kick. You're so stingy. Do you know what the practical lesson is about? Zilai also widened his eyes and said, you don't even know about practical classes. What is it? Pursued the green pheasant. Think for yourself, who told you to sleep all day? Zilai wouldn't say he didn't know either. He and Qingzhi are birds of a feather, both of whom like to sleep during class. Forget it, we'll know then. Qingzhi yawned and planned to go to school to catch up on sleep first. He worked too hard studying data last night and had to sleep a little during the day. A few months later, it finally arrived at the practical class, but by this time Qingzhi had already completely forgotten what Gangshou had said last time. Yuzhibo Qingzhi, Qianshou Gangshou. The two people who were called by name immediately prepared to leave. Both sides stood opposite each other and made a seal of opposition. Gangshou spoke up first, eager to try. I will defeat you, just like how my grandfather defeated your ancestors in the past. Green pheasant. Just saying such harsh words up here, are you Yuzhibo or am I Yuzhibo? The atmosphere has been set in place, it's time to dry up. The homeroom teacher shouted loudly, let's start. Before the sound fell, Gangshou launched an attack first, preparing to take the initiative. Faced with the fierce attack, Qingzhi restrained his usual laziness and took it seriously. On one side of his body, he could barely dodge, and the fist style he breathed in his ear revealed the difficulty of this punch. She wouldn't be trying to blow my head off, would she? The green pheasant thinks ill of itself. Without hitting a single punch, the second wave of attacks followed one after another, and the green pheasant dared not confront them head-on, only dodging in embarrassment. Only dodging and not attacking, the disadvantage becomes more and more obvious. Gangshou sees the slightest difference, seizes the loophole, steps forward and kicks sideways, hitting Qingzhi's chest with a single blow, causing him to fly all over. At this point, the green pheasant no longer persisted and lay on the ground, raising its hand to surrender. Gangshou is really scary, I lost. The green pheasant climbed up with all its strength, covering its chest with a painful expression. At the end of the competition, following a smooth process, both sides have to go through a set of procedures. Gangshou and Qingzhi are no exception. Both sides stand together, stretch out two fingers, overlap and clasp them together, and the seal of reconciliation corresponds to the seal of opposition, symbolizing that even the greatest gap between ninjas can be reconciled. The green pheasant felt the softness, temperature, and force on its fingers. You hurt me. Gangshou snorted and let go of his finger. The group of Qingzhi and Gangshou ended, and the teacher immediately called another group. Zilaya, Orochimaru. The days of sleeping at school passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was the weekend again. The sun is bright and the moon is shining after the wind. This is a great day for fishing. The green pheasant arrived at a lake in the back mountain, and under the strong sunlight, the water surface shimmered. He took out his fishing rod and threw it into the lake, closed his eyes, and volunteered to take the bait. Whether or not one can catch fish is not so important for the pheasant, it is important to cultivate their character. The primary prerequisite for practicing immortality is to have a calm mind. Although there is no way to learn immortality, it does not hinder him from adapting in advance and finding feelings. When closing the curtain and concentrating, out of sight, the ears often become very sensitive, and any slight movement will provide timely feedback. Come out now. The green pheasant let out a shout, and his quiet voice echoed through it, accompanied by the rustling of grass. A girl walked out from behind the tree. Seeing her, Qingzhi was taken aback for a moment and smiled. I didn't expect that Gangshou had a habit of peeping at people. Gangshou's face sank and he came straight to the point. Did you release water last time? End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Fishing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Fishing. _ How did you know that hiding oneself is so good? Seeing his words stuttering, Gangshou thought to himself as expected, gritting his teeth fiercely and saying, "You dare to insult me, this guy." Gangshou clenched his fists tightly and wished he could have a fight with Qingzhi right away. Qingzhi blushed with sweat. What kind of words are these? If you have something to discuss, don't act recklessly. Angry Gangshou didn't listen to advice and came up with a hard punch. She is not as irrational as she appears on the surface, but rather wants to force out the true strength of the green pheasant. Qingzhi had a premonition that if he were still deliberately hit with this punch like he did at school, he would probably just rest and not dare to lift himself up. He would dive with his body attached to his body, embrace his opponent's arms with both hands, and throw her over the shoulder with his back, throwing her out directly. Across from the lake, the result is naturally obvious. With a loud crash, Gangshou fell into the lake and became a drowned rat. Gangshou crawled out of the lake, wet all over, with water droplets dripping from his hair and a disheveled appearance resembling that of a ghost named Sadako who had just crawled out of a well. Green pheasant. This time, Gangshou was really angry, and the roaring voice of Hedong Lion almost deafened Qingzhi's ears. So, I can understand your feelings at this moment, but please pay attention to your image at this moment. The green pheasant pointed to the damp clothes on his fingertips. Due to the hot weather, he naturally felt cooler wearing them, so it seemed like something was going through. Gangshou lowered his head and instantly blushed like a steamed green crab in his ears. Ya-ah! A sharp cry suddenly sounded, and the birds in the treetops were startled and flew towards the blue sky. Pop pop. Accompanied by two crisp sounds, the green pheasant's face added two spicy red marks. Once a woman gets angry, it's unreasonable, and the same goes for a child. What are you still dragging around? Why don't you start a fire and help me dry my clothes? The green pheasant dug into the wood to start a fire while muttering, "Women are really unreasonable creatures. It was you who provoked me first. Where is your escape from fire?" Gangshou saw the green pheasant fidgeting for a while, feeling a bit impatient. The green pheasant couldn't breathe well and said, "No way. No. You're not part of the Uchiha clan." Gangshou widened his eyes in disbelief. Isn't Uchiha a ninja known for his fire escape and Sharingan? Qingzhi's expression was difficult to understand. Whoever tells you that Yuzhibo will definitely escape. However, she reminded herself that she could take some time to learn ninjutsu. His grandmother's practice notebook seemed to have detailed records of several fire escape ninjutsu techniques. For example, the technique of Huadun and Haohuiqiu. Before awakening to ice escape, Qingzhi actually had a fire-type chakra. When his grandmother was alive, she used chakra paper to test it for herself. Chakra, who possesses the attribute of fire, should not find it too difficult to learn the technique of fire escape and fireball on his own. Yuzhibo Weasel learned with just a glance, and Sasuke almost spent an afternoon. He humbly took a few days to learn. "You're really inferior," Gangshou sneered. The green pheasant took a deep breath and resisted the urge of all the cells to beat her up. Just then, he suddenly noticed that his fishing rod was slowly moving and didn't have time to think much. He pounced forward and grabbed it. From the force transmitted from the fishing rod, the green pheasant had a premonition that the fish hooked must be a big fish, but the question was whether the fish's strength was too strong. The green pheasant, along with the fishing rod, is gradually being pulled into the water. Where are people fishing? It's clear that the fish is fishing for people. Gangshou, what are you still doing? Why don't you come over and help? The green pheasant roared. He doesn't even know how long the Air Force has been around, and he can never be in the Air Force again today. Gangshou was stunned for a moment and rushed forward. At this moment, half of Qingzhi's head was already submerged in the water, with only 2 nostrils and mouth exposed, and he was about to touch his entire head. Fortunately, Gangshou grabbed his legs in time and dragged him back. Apply force. You don't have to say, I'm already doing it. After a tug of war, a large fish of unknown species was finally pulled ashore by two people. The two of them were panting heavily and glanced at each other. At this moment, both sides became disheveled and dirty due to fishing. Look at you now, you're as dirty as a little flower cat. You're not the same. What face do you have to say about me? After teasing each other, Qingzhi said solemnly, thank you so much just now. Gangshou waved his hand and said, you're welcome. Gangshou and Qingzhi had no deep hatred at all. The cooperation just now, their relationship unconsciously eased a lot. Let's go back and take a shower first, otherwise it's really dirty. Okay. The two of them are now covered in mud and it's really uncomfortable not to take a shower. Qingzhi hung the spoils of war on his back and walked with Gangshou. On the way back, Gangshou brought up the old story again and said, why did you release water during the practical class? Afraid of trouble. Excuse me. The green pheasant said with foresight, I have stated in advance that you are not allowed to hit me. Gangshou frowned and agreed, okay, you tell me, I won't hit you. It's simple. With your personality, if I win over you, I will definitely try my best to win back. Don't be so annoying. It seems like you're going to win over me at all. Let's move on and make some moves. Gangshou made a cut, it is undeniable that the other party was very accurate. For example, last time when her sword assessment score was not as good as Qingzhi's, all she could think about was how to win over the other party. You see, it's coming again, said the green pheasant helplessly. The two of them walked on the road, chatting while walking, and unknowingly walked to the fork in the road. The places where Qianshou and Yuzhibo live are completely different directions. So that's it, I'll go home first. After a brief farewell, the two parted ways and Qingzhi entered the Yuzhibo tribe's territory. Passing by, the vendor smiled at him and said, oh, Qingzhi, fishing today is not Air Force. Huh, I've hit the bottom and rebounded, haven't I? Can you finish eating such a big fish alone? Do you want to sell it to me? No, I need to bring this fish to entertain the guests. Guest? Well, let's not talk about it anymore. My body is covered in mud and I feel really uncomfortable. I need to go take a shower first. Not far away, through the curtains, the conversation between the green pheasant and the merchant was captured by the two men. Elder Itachi, is it really good to continue letting the green pheasant continue like this? The middle-aged man who spoke had a solemn face and two deep lines of law on his face. This middle-aged man's name is Yuzhibo Reihuo, and he is an elite member of the Yuzhibo clan. Across from his desk was an elderly man with a bright face, wrinkles all over his face, an old age, but his eyes always shone with a sharp light. Yuzhibo Itachi. He is a ninja who has survived since the Warring States period and is the most respected elder of the Uchiha family. He loves his family more than anyone else, and even though he has retired early, he still cares about the cultivation of the family's younger generations. When Qingzhi knew the elder, he wanted to roast his name very much, but it suddenly occurred to him that Fu Yu had named his little son after someone else's father. It's a bit similar to the custom of naming someone on the other side of the ocean in a previous life, and choosing this person's name means looking up to them. Elder Itachi spoke calmly, let's observe for a few years. If you haven't opened the Sharingan yet, then prepare to give up. Isn't this kid expressing his unwillingness to become a ninja? Well, then I'll follow his wishes and let him live his life quietly. When I arrive in the underworld, I'll also have an explanation for Qingniao. What are you saying, Elder Itachi? You haven't been very good yet. Even though my body has not yet died, my soul can no longer keep up with this era. Back then, Ban and Qianshu teamed up to create the wooden leaf, ending the Warring States period. Elder Itachi shook his head and sighed, at that time, I thought the world would usher in true peace, but I didn't expect to end up at this point. Yuzhibo said in a deep voice, I never expected that Lord Ban would end up in that way. Elder Itachi squinted slightly and said, do you think Ban really died? Yuzhibo Leihua was surprised and said, is it possible that Lord Ban was not dead? How could this be? Lord Ban's body was personally confirmed by Fei Jian and Zhu Jian, and weren't you present at that time? Indeed, at that time I thought Bane had died, but soon after that, something very mysterious happened. It caused me to change my attitude. Bane's body disappeared out of thin air and became a shadow clone, you should know. Isn't that because the body was stolen? The corpse of Ban is an unparalleled treasure for anyone, especially those pair of unparalleled eyes that make people envious. If it weren't for the pressure between the pillars not wanting to let their close friend die without peace, the Uchiha clan would have recovered this corpse long ago. Do you also believe this kind of thing? I estimate that this guy Ban may have used Izanagi. Is that forbidden technique? It's impossible. If it's this technique, it's impossible not to detect it with the ability between the pillars. The kaleidoscope Sharingan can be placed in the eyes with a time difference, and it is possible that the spot has accurately calculated its own body and will not be processed. Then, it activates the hidden eye of Izanagi to change the fact that it is already dead, playing a role in concealing the truth. This is really amazing. Yuzhibo took a cold breath and said, so what is the purpose of Master Ban? Now that Zhu Jian is dead, there should be no one in this world who can stop him. I'm not sure, but since leaving Kiba, Ban has suddenly attacked her again. With his personality, he must have some kind of hidden purpose. After all, he has the power to see things that we can't see above all the members of his tribe. However, because of this, he can sometimes be too arbitrary and reckless. After experiencing the beauty of peace, how could the members of his tribe easily leave him and go back to the restless days of the past? Elder Itachi shook his head and continued, in an instant, that guy might have sensed this and wanted to incite the Uchiha tribe to rebel and cause trouble. He then hoped to have an inside-out cooperation with Ban to seize the political power of Kiba. However, he didn't expect the little ghost in Kazuma to react so quickly, and Ban never appeared. Upon hearing this, Yuzhibo let out a deep sigh and said, the world is really not peaceful. I feel like the next tribal leader has a heavy and long way to go. Of course, the above is just my personal speculation, and it's also possible that the body of the spot has been stolen. Itachi looked at him and said, I heard you've become a grandfather recently, haven't you? Yuzhibo felt ashamed and said, yes, I'm only one grandson at the age of 36. It's really dragging me down. Ninjas are a profession that licks blood all day long. During the Warring States period, children had to go to the battlefield at the age of 4 or 5, with a very high mortality rate. In order to maintain their population, families adopted a strategy of early and multiple births. Every year, the family arranged blind dates, and the earliest they could match up was 1 day. Then, they actively gave birth to offspring every day and night. So, at the age of Yuzhibo, having only one grandson is a bit unattractive. However, the current era is a bit different from the past, and wars are not as frequent as they used to be. We also have some free time to fall in love, which naturally delays the birth of children. What is his name? Elder Itachi asked. Fuyue, replied Yuzhibo. That's a really nice name. When he gets a little older, let me guide him. While I'm still dancing, let's have one last one. Although I can't stand that kid in the pillar, he's quite right. Where the leaves dance, the fire keeps burning. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Managing Your Girlfriend. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Managing Your Girlfriend. After taking a shower, as soon as Qingzhi left the bathroom, he heard someone calling him outside the door. Qingzhi opened the door and saw a familiar figure standing in front of him. He had blonde hair and was wearing a beige dress, emitting a faint soap fragrance. Qingzhi was surprised and said, "Why did you come to my house?" Didn't you say you wanted to thank me for helping you catch the fish, so you invited me to dinner? The green pheasant almost forgot. After the two caught a fish, Qingzhi planned to make a local dish to reward Gangshou, which led to this scene. Do you know my family? Qingzhi said strangely, remembering that he probably didn't tell Gangshou about his family. Just ask anyone and you'll know. Gungate said lightly, I've been standing outside for so long. Don't you invite me in to sit down? Speaking of which, it was her first time entering a boy's house of the same age and she was quite interested in all of this. However, when invited into the room by Qingzhi, she was greatly disappointed and looked at the messy room with a slight frown. Your room is really messy, she said. Qingzhi hesitated and said, the boys' houses are like this, let alone the golden and silver nests where my dog's nest is comfortable. What strange metaphor is this? Your room is so messy, wouldn't your family scold you? Gangshou remembers that every time he littered his things, he would be scolded by his mother. At that time, it was still his grandfather who spoke up for her. Qingzhi remained silent for a moment and said, it's okay, I'll live alone. Although he is just a guy who occupies a magpie's nest, he, who has all the memories of the host, can empathize with some things. Living alone. Gangshou noticed a photo frame placed by the bedside, featuring a middle-aged woman and a boy with a bright smile. It is not difficult to see from the boy's profile that he is the green pheasant in front of him. Thinking back to the meaning of the words just now, a little deeper thinking will lead to some conclusions. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Qingzhi interrupted, hey, why are you showing such an expression? It would actually make you uncomfortable. I still like your rebellious and unruly appearance on weekdays, hee. With a cheap smile, Gangshou angrily punched and said, you owe me a beating. Despite that, the fist didn't exert much force. Qingzhi dodged on his side and joked, you can easily hit people, but you won't be able to get married in the future. Anyway, I won't marry you. Qingzhi spread his hands and said, all right, let's not talk about this anymore. I'll go cook. Let you try my craft. To capture a woman's heart, the first step is to capture her taste buds. Qingzhi is well versed in this, and although he does not intend to pursue Gangshou in the short term, it is necessary to maintain a certain level of favorability. The green pheasant washed the rice clean, then put it into the container used for steaming rice, add a certain amount of water to the container, cover the lid, and start steaming rice. To do all of this well, he went to take out the fish, cut off the flesh one by one, rinse it a few times, remove the blood, and then put it into a large bowl. He added starch, egg white, salt, chicken essence, cooking wine, pepper, and so on, kneaded them to remove the fishy smell and form a paste. I can't tell you're pretty good at it. What are you going to do? Said Gangshou with great interest as he became very proficient in the operation. Pickled Chinese cabbage fish, this is a special food I invented. After you eat it, make sure your mouth is watering. Qingzhi shamelessly blamed the invention of this dish on himself, without blushing or beating his heart. Gangshou refused to believe, blow it off. She doesn't believe how delicious the dishes invented by a 5-year-old kid would be. You wait and see. The fish is sliced into pulp, and it will take at least 10 minutes to marinate it. During this time, Qingzhi is going to the market to buy some seasoning, and Gangshou is bored at home, so he follows suit. The two walked shoulder to shoulder on the road. Ha! Isn't this Qingzhi and Gangshou? A surprised voice came from behind, and Qingzhi and Gangshou turned around at the same time. That is a boy with white hair, and there is also a boy with black hair beside him. The white one appears to have a frivolous demeanor, while the black one appears very calm, making it difficult to imagine the two of them getting together. Seeing the two of them, Gangshou was surprised and said, Zelaya and Orochimaru, I never expected to see you all together. This sentence should have been spoken by me, Qingzhi and Gangshou. Zilai also looked at the people alternately, as if they had noticed something, but with a mischievous smile, he said, aren't you two supposed to be on a date? As soon as the words fell, a heavy oil stick swung over, and Zilai's smile froze instantly. He knelt down and covered his stomach in pain. If you don't speak, no one will consider you mute, said Gangshou coldly. Stinky old lady. Since then, the duck's mouth has been stiff. What are you saying? Gangshou frowned and glared angrily, grabbing Zilai's collar and lifting it with one hand. Zilai's pupils furrowed and he said with fear, Qingzhi, take care of your girlfriend. Ignoring Zilai's plea for help, Qingzhi turned to look at Orochimaru and curiously said, how are you two together? Orochimaru said helplessly, I just happened to meet you on the way, and then this guy was clinging to me, wanting to compete with me on his sword. The green pheasant nodded to indicate understanding. And you? Orochimaru looked at Tsunade, who was beating Jiraiya. Gangshou helped me catch a big fish. To thank her, I prepared a dish to reward her. Now, the two of us are preparing to buy some cooking ingredients. Orochimaru nodded and understood. But the question arises again. How could Qingzhi and Gangshou fish together, and when did their relationship get so good? It won't really be like what Zilai said just now, the two of them have gotten along although there are doubts. Orochimaru is not very interested in gossip in this area. Compared to this, he is more interested in other aspects. Qingzhi Jun, are you available tomorrow? I have some questions recently and would like to discuss them with you. The two officially got to know each other in the library, and at first, Orochimaru didn't want to pay attention to the behavior of Qingzhi actively approaching. But after a few brief conversations, Orochimaru discovered that Qingzhi was a very interesting person who often came up with refreshing viewpoints. As they walked around, the two became familiar and often discussed some issues privately. No problem. Qingzhi readily agreed. Seeing the two of them chatting happily, Gangshou was surprised to let go of his grip on Jiraiya's collar. Orochimaru, who had always been alone, surprisingly had close contact with the sleeping pheasant, and among the two, the pheasant was still the dominant figure. Are you very familiar with Orochimaru? It's okay, isn't it? Qingzhi said lightly. We often discuss some interesting questions. What kind of topic? Gangshou is very curious about what topics people like Orochimaru usually discuss with Qingzhi. The world we live in may be round, said the green pheasant with a slight smile, extending its two hands and touching its 5 fingers in a circular shape. Upon hearing this sentence, Gangshou was completely bewildered. What exactly is this talking about? She could understand every word, but she didn't even know what Qingzhi was talking about. Orochimaru silently watched Gungate's reaction. At first, he heard this sentence no better than Gungate's, thinking that Qingzhi was talking nonsense. However, he didn't expect Qingzhi to be able to analyze it with reason and evidence afterwards. Suddenly, Orochimaru's impression of Qingzhi's love for sleep turned 180 degrees, shocking the heavens and humans. It's a very interesting topic, isn't it? Orochimaru smiled. Are you two studying these things all day long? Gungate looked at them strangely. Not entirely, we occasionally explore other interesting things, such as what were the earliest human ancestors. Isn't the ancestor of humanity human? What's there to discuss? Said Gangshou in confusion. No, I mean earlier, before humans fully evolved into humans. When it comes to this matter, Orochimaru seems to have opened a conversation box and spoke fluently. Organisms will constantly evolve over time and the environment, and humans have also evolved in this way. During my communication with Qingzhi Jun, I came to the conclusion that humans may have evolved from some kind of monkey. Is this an interesting viewpoint? Gangshou. Compared to discussing these things, she is more focused on eating. Seeing Gangshou's lack of interest, Orochimaru decided not to continue discussing. Different paths lead to different strategies. Indeed, the only one who can directly reach the depths of his soul is Qingzhi Jun. Qingzhi asked, Big Snake Maru, have you eaten your meal? No. Since that's the case, come to my house and have some. Anyway, the fish is so big that I and Gangshou can't finish it. If we keep it for a long time, the fish won't be fresh. Orochimaru didn't show any affectation when invited, but nodded in agreement. He also wanted to taste what the dishes made by the green pheasant would look like. Since his parents passed away, there was a period of extreme pain in his heart. Because he was afraid of feeling this pain again, he actively closed his heart and became unwilling to communicate with others. It's because of the appearance of the pheasant that we can communicate normally with people now. In the early stages of communicating with Qingzhi, I found the other person's speech very interesting. As we continued to communicate, the closed door gradually began to open, making him overcome the shadow in his heart. At this thought, a smile appeared on the corner of Orochimaru's mouth that he couldn't even notice. The expression on Orochimaru's face caught the eye of Qingzhi. It seemed that under his influence, Orochimaru had slowly begun to emerge from the darkness. In the later stage of the original work, Orochimaru became so sarcastic that it was largely influenced by external factors. Taking advantage of the fact that Orochimaru was only showing signs, Qingzhi promptly extinguished the signs, which could be considered a good thing. Looking at the three of them leaving behind, Zilai, who had been led by Gangshou Pighead, shouted, "Hey, have you forgotten about me?" End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10 Dinner Gathering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Dinner Gathering. As he looked at a guy who was following him relentlessly, Gangshou looked contemptuous and said, "What are you doing here?" "That's too much, I came first, okay." Zilai didn't get angry, "You're the one who came later." He is referring to the matter of becoming friends with the green pheasant. "You're itching, right?" Gangshou gave him a fierce glare. Zilai, who was already a bit scared of being beaten by Gangshou, timidly hid behind Qingzhi. For the behavior that Zilai couldn't learn to behave well, Qingzhi shook his head. It was clear that as long as he softened, Gangshou wouldn't move around. No wonder Gangshou couldn't catch up with this guy in the original work. "Wait a moment, I'll go cook." Gangshou, Zilai, and Orochimaru were arranged in the living room, while he went to the kitchen to cut the ingredients, heat the pot and pour oil, and so on. As a foodie and bachelor, he was already familiar with things like this. After all, no one hurts, we can only hurt ourselves. While Green Pheasant was cooking with great enthusiasm, on the other side, Gangtae, Deshimaru, and Zilai stared at each other, suddenly realizing a bit awkward. Although the three of them are all in the same class, they don't usually intersect much. Now they are all together because of the Green Pheasant as the hub. Fortunately, not long after, the Green Pheasant returned and broke the awkwardness. When Gangshou saw him return, he was surprised and said, "Have you finished your dishes?" "That's so fast." "This dish needs to be cooked over high heat for 15 minutes, replied Qingzhi. "During this time, I'll take a break." Gangshou asked, "Do you usually do it yourself?" Qingzhi shrugged and said, "Otherwise, as a lonely person, I can only do it myself. Eating out is so expensive." After her grandmother passed away, she left behind a decent inheritance. Qingzhi plans to use this money to start a business after graduation, so she naturally needs to be frugal in her daily life. The ninja industry is like a previous underworld organization. Once you enter, it becomes difficult to get out. As long as the club needs you, you must be on call. Otherwise, I'll give you a hat of disobedience, and in severe cases, I might be seen as rebellious. This is not an exaggeration by Qingzhi, but rather that after becoming a ninja, especially a highly skilled ninja, they will inevitably come into contact with confidential information about the village during missions. For the sake of management convenience, Kiba will definitely not allow the ninjas in her village to be free-spirited. Before reaching the age of 16 or so, the strategy of the young pheasant is to pretend to be a daimyo, and then wait for age to come out and add fame to his future campaign for the Hokage position. As for why it is 16 years old, not before or after. That's because during this period, one's physical hardware is basically fully developed and will not suffer losses due to age. Chakra is composed of a combination of yang and yin, where yang represents body energy. Taking the example of the three little Changs in the original work, we will refer to them from three stages. The Book of Linji, the Book of Doji, and the Book of Ji. Naruto's Chakra. 8/8/10 Sasuke's Chakra. 4/6/7 Sakura's Chakra. 2/3/5 Among them, the books of Linji and Doji are close in time, with a significant increase. 3 years after reaching the Book of Zhiji, Chakra's progress has been relatively slow. Chakra is just like height, and later training has a certain impact. It's more about talent. Based on the above, Qingzhi can conclude that at the age of 16, he has basically grown up in hardware and will not make much progress in the future unless he cheats. That's also why Qingzhi plans to go out of the mountains at the age of 16, instead of becoming a ninja right after graduation. Ninjas are high-risk professions, and going out before they develop is like seeking death in his eyes. Although becoming a ninja early can help accumulate experience and upgrade earlier, the prerequisite is to survive. 15 minutes passed quickly, and the green pheasant put the steaming pickled Chinese cabbage fish in front of the table for 3 people. The 3 people looked at this dish called pickled Chinese cabbage fish, and it was very appetizing from the outside. I'm moving now. I can't wait to pick up a piece of fish and put it into my mouth. After tasting and chewing it with rice, my face shows a happy expression. Wow, this pickled Chinese cabbage fish is too delicious. Upon hearing the words, Gangshou and Yuzhibo also picked up a piece of fish meat and tasted it. As Zilai also said, it was truly delicious, with a perfect combination of color, aroma, and flavor. Quickly, a big fish was defeated by the 4 of them, and among them, Gangshou, who was a girl, exerted great strength. She was really capable of eating. It is reasonable for her to evolve from an airport at the age of 11 or 12 in just a few years to a woman with a low head and no toes in the future. Zilai also touched his belly and let out a burp, generously praising him. Qingzhi, you are really a genius. I think you can even open a shop with your skills. Following Zilaya's words, Qingzhi smiled and said, I have this intention. After I graduate from school, I plan to open my own restaurant. Are you not joking with me? Gangshou put down his chopsticks and looked at the other person in astonishment, finding it difficult to agree with Qingzhi's ideals. Ninjas are respected professions, and being able to become a ninja is definitely something to be proud of. Many children in the village want to pretend that they haven't had this opportunity yet. Ninja schools are very strict in terms of enrollment, and there are many children who are rejected with resentment every year. In addition, the green pheasant is one of the top Uchiha families in Kono, born well and with outstanding talent. It is not considered a ninja, and in the eyes of Tsunade, it is simply a waste. At the age of only 5, Gangshou understood this simple truth. He didn't believe in Qingzhi and didn't understand it. Seemingly seeing through Tsunade's ideas, Qingzhi organized a few words. I'm not interested in ninjas. If it weren't for my family forcing me, I wouldn't have entered this school at all. Moreover, it's not correct to say that opening a store is my ideal. My ultimate goal is this. Come on, he rubbed his fingers and made a counting gesture. Gangshou reacted and said, money. That's right, only money is what I truly pursue. Shallow. In response to the greedy behavior of the opponent Qingzhi, Gangshou mercilessly sneered, the honor of a ninja cannot be measured by simple money. Qingzhi looked at it and saw that Gangshou had been brainwashed quite a bit. He shook his head and asked, then tell me how the honor of a ninja can be measured. The honor of a ninja is a priceless treasure, explained Tsunade, a priceless treasure, that's worthless. Qingzhi sneered and then looked into the other person's eyes, saying in an extremely serious tone, do you know what the most tragic thing in this world is? Gangshou was taken aback and said, what? I earned money, but lost people, and then my wife took my money and ran away with another man. My future goal is to marry 2 wives and live a life of support. Although ninjas have a decent income, they are enough to support me in raising 2 wives and living a decent life. But the premise is that I also need to have a life flower. You know, ninjas are a high-risk profession, and maybe I will die young one day. Then my wife will work hard to earn money to love other men. I have knowledge that I will definitely die in peace. At this point, Qingzhi's emotions suddenly became excited. He extended his index finger and spoke sternly, "Damn it, be a ninja. Whoever loves it, I won't be able to be it." Gangshou's mouth twitched as he looked at Qingzhi, as if he had met him for the first time. She could understand that he was afraid of death, but Qingzhi was such a person. He had fantasized about having 2 wives since childhood, and indeed, he had not been wronged at that time. He was just a big pervert. Big pervert. Qingzhi has also predicted Gangshou's prediction since then. Anyway, in Gangshou's mind, he is a pervert, so he decided to directly expose himself and play his true colors, while also consolidating his bad character. Moreover, this persona also has an advantage, as it makes it easier to get close to Gangshou. Usually, intentionally or unintentionally approaching Gangshou may lead to suspicion, but it's better to be straightforward and less likely to arouse suspicion. In response, Zilai nodded unexpectedly and agreed, "How could a man marry 2 wives? This is really unacceptable." This sentence made Gangshou slightly relieved. Although he has always been lascivious, unreliable, and even lacking in beating, there is still a basic bottom line. It seems that there was a slight misunderstanding of him in the past. A big man is born between heaven and earth. How can he be satisfied just by embracing each other? After all, he needs 7 wives, 1 week for a total of 7 days, changing every day. Zilai also spoke with a majestic voice. This sentence instantly wiped out the favorable impression that Gangshou had previously had, and coupled with the emotional pressure from earlier, she couldn't help but punch Zilai. Zilai also covered his face and felt aggrieved, saying, "It's clearly what Qingzhi said. Why are you hitting me with your hands?" "Shut up," Gangshou said with a cannibalistic gaze. Zilai also wanted to defend himself, but Gangshou interrupted, "Men are all big pig hooves." She cursed, snorted, rushed out the door, and left the room. Qingzhi continued, "The so-called ninja is just a profession that earns money. I think I will earn more money in business in the future than being a ninja. If that's the case, why should I risk my life?" Orochimaru leaned over and said with a smile, "Qingzhi Jun's thinking is really interesting." Qingzhi's words had to be agreed with by him. After all, his parents died when they were ninjas. In other words, ninjas were just a profession to support their families. Honor and so on, in the eyes of Orochimaru, are very boring now. Even if a person is dead, why do they want that optional honor? Hello. At this moment, Gangshou suddenly fired a counterattack, startling Qingzhi and saying, "Why did you come back again? I owe you this meal, and I will repay it to you." Without waiting for the green pheasant to react, Gangshou flew away. This time didn't come too late, and soon Gangshou invited Qingzhi to her as a guest. She personally made a dish to entertain him, and for this, he consulted Grandma Mito on how to cook delicious food. "Please hold a grateful heart towards me, this is the dish I specially made for you." In front of the table, Gangshou, who had unlocked his apron dress, crossed his waist with both hands, and raised his head like a proud little rooster. Qingzhi silently lowered her head and looked at the dark substance emitting a ghostly aura on the table. The corners of her mouth twitched and she said, "What have I done to make you want to kill me?" End of this chapter.